I've been packing boxes for the past few days, moving out of my parents' place and into my own. Admittedly, there wasn't a ton to do on trying to furnish a whole apartment with a bedroom's worth of stuff. It's strange how it can seem like you own so many things until you move to a larger space. Suddenly, all of the things that spent years next to each other have a whole new open area to be spread across. There was one box that was nearly forgotten because it wasn't a newly packed box. It was a box packed by my parents years ago. The one almost everyone has, and has to make a decision at some point about whether to keep it. The box of your childhood things. If my dad hadn't remembered, it would have sat up in the attic for another few years. I wonder what we would have thought as kids, peering into the future, knowing that all our favorite things end up collecting dust and only ever thought about when you move house. It's a curious thought. I took the box to my new apartment and began sorting through it. I decided to get it out of the way first, as it was the only box where I wasn't sure of the contents. I didn't know how much I'd be keeping, throwing away, or donating. Putting everything into 3 piles was difficult and emotional, but I was able to make a decision for most things. To say it opened a gateway back into my childhood would be wrong, as it didn't. A gateway would imply I could walk through and live it again. What it provided was a window, one which I could only look through and never open. But what a beautiful, crystal clear window it provided. Sorting through that box was one of the happiest moments of the past few years. Until I got to the end. Perhaps the reason I'm focusing so much on happiness is that I'm afraid to continue this story. The final item in the box was a diary. My diary. It was pink and shiny. Cliché, but all the TV shows had this sort of thing in, so it's what I wanted as a kid. I never stuck to many things in my childhood, and this was no different. I used it for about half a year, and even then I missed about half the days. So even after 6 months, it would have only had about 100 entries. I sat there and read every single one. Each dated about 10 years ago, and each one making me happier. But the smile dropped from my face when the dates crossed a threshold of impossibility. 2 years ago. Dear Diary, I totally forgot about this. My dad got a new job recently and had to store some of his old work stuff in the attic. I helped and found this whilst up there. Reading through the old entries was enchanting, to say the least. Maybe I'll come back sometimes and write more, smiley face. Alicia, my handwriting, my name. But I hadn't been up here 2 years ago. My dad didn't get a new job 2 years ago. It didn't make sense. I wasn't exactly scared at that point. I didn't know what to think. I was just confused, and so I read on. 1 year ago. Dear Diary, this again. Although I don't remember writing that last year. How strange. Was still cool to read through all of this, though. I've just moved out and found this in a box of old stuff. Good job my dad reminded me about it. I'm hoping that living alone isn't as scary as it seems. I suppose only time will tell. Future me, you got this. Smiley face. Alicia, how could this be dated a year ago? This all happened, but it happened the same day I had read it, and I certainly never wrote it. 6 months ago. I'm not doing this diary shit. What the fuck is this? I've never had a diary in my entire life. How does this thing know everything that has happened to me as a kid? At this point, I started to freak out. This entry wasn't like the others. It wasn't just confusing for me, but clearly whoever wrote it was also confused and concerned. Except, they still seem to think they're me. The next one changed that. 4 months ago. How odd. This entire journal perfectly describes my life up until a couple of years ago. I'm moving out in a few months. I haven't already moved out. But all of the entries as a child perfectly mimic my life, except for one crucial detail. My name is Rebecca. How on earth could this be? The next one was the worst. 2 months ago. Dear Diary, someone just broke in. I'm hiding in the attic and I found my childhood diary. I've called the police, but I'm scared. I just need to take my mind away from this. The police wanted me to stay on the phone, but I was afraid of making noise. I can hear them downstairs. I hope I get to read this again soon. Writing this makes me feel like I'm going to be okay. It turns this into a memory and not a final day. I wish I had time to read the past entries, but I don't. I promise I will soon. I just hope that I manage to. The entry ended there. It's covered in dry blood. At this point, I was physically shaking. But I felt like I had the duty to continue this, and so I did. I took out a pen and wrote, Dear Diary, I don't know what this thing is. Will I remember writing this? What kind of power this book has is beyond me. But whatever is going on, I don't like it. I died. I moved out a year ago. My dad got a new job 2 years ago. My name is Rebecca. None of it makes any sense. My pen ran out of ink, so I went looking for another one. I intended to finish the entry. But when I returned, the journal was gone. I wonder where it went. It's not often we get calls from the trailer park at the station. When there are reports, it's usually about them and not the other way around. They don't trust us very much, which I understand. We don't trust them either. In fact, it's well known some of the inhabitants of the park engage in several criminal activities. However, as a policeman, I always try to view people as people, even the outcasts. Especially the outcasts. So, when one of them rang us on a payphone about 3 newborn infants going missing in the past 3 days, I volunteered to check it out along with some other officers. Kids in this place are what you could call raised by the community, which means everyone looks out for each other and the parents trust their neighbors with watching their kids when it is necessary. Really quite communal and friendly when compared to the individualistic society most others call home in a big city. Here it did not work in their favor, however. All infants went missing during a lapse in attention by a parent of other supervisor. My colleagues continued to investigate the camp itself, while I took the police vehicle and drove slowly with an open window to scour the surroundings. The camp was situated close to a dike next to a broad river, where huge freighters went from the mainland towards the harbors at the river mouth. About a mile or 2 from the camp was a high overpass, above which cars raced towards the city center. During rush hour, you could hear the horns and smell the exhaust fumes all the way below. Beyond the overpass, the road continued along the dike, and on the left side a thick patch of green reeds grew. This spot would flood a little during the rainier parts of the year. It is a great place for getting lost or hiding. It's there that I heard the crying. Clear as day, the small wails of an infant echoed through the reeds, as if the stalks themselves were being lashed by the wind. I exited the vehicle and slowly made my way through the reeds, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. The child was clearly close to the ground, so determining the exact direction was difficult, especially between the rustling. After a while I noticed another soft sound, a very subtle crunching. It was nearly indistinguishable from the reeds, but as I got close it became more clear. Soon, that all ceased mattering. "Hey! You!" someone shouted suddenly. "This is Poops of Blood." Suddenly from my right, a huge figure emerged from the reeds. That figure is permanently burned on the inside of my eyelids. It was human, clearly human, but what a terrible specimen. She was fat, so much so that she seemed just on the edge of being able to walk. She had short straw-colored hair, and her voice sounded like a man's, probably due to years of smoking and other substance abuse. Her skin was full of scabs, and her teeth were sharpened from decay and gnawing hard foods. Her mouth was covered with dried blood, mixed with either dirt, dung, or both. To my absolute horror, I saw that in her hand she held the body of one of the newborns. The bottom half she had already devoured, and the upper torso she flailed around horribly while she screamed at me. "This is Poops of Blood. It was made from above. For you. Not me." She stared intently at me as she screamed this, and she walked towards me in a surprisingly quick pace for her size. I guess the reeds are no longer an issue when you're that heavy. It was at this point I noticed I had left my service weapon in the car. I cursed under my breath while slowly walking backwards, trying to maintain eye contact. I was not going to be able to arrest this person on my own. I needed backup, and she walked too fast for my liking. In the background, the quiet wailing affirmed at least one of the infants was still alive. "Say it with me," she screamed hoarsely. "This is Poops of Blood. It was made from above, for you. Not me." I obliged, hoping that it would calm her down. "This is Poops of Blood," I shouted along with her. Made from above, made from above. For you, for me. Not me, not you." Seeing the corpse flapping with every syllable made me absolutely sick, but I stuck to this tactic until I was close enough to reach for the door handle of the police vehicle. The moment I turned to open the door, I fell to the ground hard. In a split second she had caught up the 10 feet distance, and with her free arm she pulled my right leg from under me. I managed to turn around quickly enough to watch her sink her disgusting rotted teeth into my shoulder. Blast, that hurts. No time to think. I punched her on the nose. Hard. Ow. "Fuck you," she shouted while she recoiled. This was just enough time for me to kick free, get in the car, and grab my weapon and radio. I thought I was good, but with some unnatural brute strength she tore the door straight off the vehicle and dragged me out. I gasped as I peered into her gaping black mouth, now pried open to inhuman dimensions like a chasm. Then, I shot her. What happened after I only remember vaguely. Perhaps due to blood loss, perhaps because I wish I could erase these memories from my brain. After radioing for backup and an ambulance, I passed out. I woke up in the hospital, my veins flooded with fresh blood and antibiotics. The woman was dead, and her stomach contents revealed the remains of 2 infants. The third was apparently rescued alive from the reeds and returned to a grateful mother and father. How that woman became this way nobody knows for certain, nor where she came from. There were no drugs found in her body, only traces of past substance abuse. Perhaps it was a sort of rabies or mad cow disease. The teeth marks on my shoulder did not correspond to the dimensions of the human jaw. The doctors said it looked more like that of a wild ape. The only reason I'm alive is because not 1 but 2 ambulances came along after my call, one for the child and one for me. I never really used to experience headaches. Sure, I had the occasional momentary stress headache, but they were nothing out of the ordinary. But one day this pain started to build behind my eyes, and since then I get these incredibly painful headaches. They're so intense that I can barely function. But it's not just the pain that's the problem. Whenever I get one of these headaches, I start seeing these figures. At first, I thought they were just hallucinations. I mean, who wouldn't think that, right? For months I've been having those headaches, seeing the figures. I tried everything to get rid of them, taking painkillers, getting more sleep, eventually even going to the doctor, but nothing seemed to work. Then one day, something happened. I was walking down the street, feeling that pressure behind the eyes, trying to make it home before another headache hit me. It was only a matter of time before I was seeing the figures again. Unfortunately, this time was different. As I turned a corner, I bumped into one of them. Until that moment, the figures had just been standing there, motionless. Previously, I'd avoided them. Couldn't really tell you why, but I always walked around them. The moment I made contact, every single one of them started staring at me. I tried to ignore them, hoping it was yet another hallucination. But then the headaches got worse. And with each headache, I started seeing more and more of the figures. It got harder and harder to ignore them. And then I happened to look one in the eye. I didn't do it on purpose or anything, my eyes just happened to stop there. I shouldn't have done that. All of the figures started sprinting towards me. I didn't know what to do. I was frozen in fear. I realized that I had to run. So I did. I don't know for how long I've been running, but it felt like hours. I don't even know how I managed to run so long. The figures were always behind me, chasing me. I never looked back, but I could hear their feet pounding on the pavement and on the streets. I don't know where I went, I just knew that I had to get away from them. Finally, I stumbled upon an old abandoned building. I didn't hesitate, I just ran inside and slammed the door shut behind me. I'm safe. For now. But I know that the figures are still out there, waiting for me. Eventually, they will find me. I don't know what will happen if they do find me. I'm not willing to take the chance. I don't know what to do. I feel like I'm losing my mind. I've been stuck in this abandoned building for hours now, hiding from the figures. But they're not leaving, they're waiting for me. I can't take it anymore. I need help. I can hear them outside. I think they're trying to open the windows. Please, someone, anyone, help me.